Alright, in today's video we're taking a look at this Sharp EL-2656G adding machine that I got some weeks ago, maybe months at this point, I don't remember. Time flies when you're having no fun at all. I bought this for $8 in a thrift store, stateside. Extremely dirty. This thing is grotesquely dirty. Some buttons are like really hard to push down because they're so crusted up. Oh, it's disgusting. I paid too much for this thing, but I got it because I thought it was cool and I thought it would be a good restoration project, or restore it as far as we can get. Aside from the sticky buttons and grotesque amount of dirt and grime, the paper roll holder is broke here, which I didn't realize. Had I seen that in the store, I probably wouldn't have bought this. But I can probably fabricate something out of a coat hanger wire or something like that and hot glue it in there to make a makeshift paper roll holder, so that's no problem. The print switch, the switch to turn the printer on and off, when it's in the P position, it still thinks it's in the off position. You have to physically press the switch down for it to make connections. So that's just a dirty switch issue. So I'm going to have to use contact cleaner on all the electrical button contacts and stuff. And finally, this thing might have a mechanical issue with the printer, because I was testing the printer, and at no point when I was testing the printer could I get it to print red. It is a two-color printer, and it's got a two-color ribbon in it, and that's a good ribbon that I put in. But it prints everything in black. Normally it would print red when you do a subtraction, but I do that and it just prints black. I'm wondering if this mechanism, which is supposed to raise up a little extra high to print red, just isn't doing that for some reason. If it's gunked up mechanically, or maybe there's like an electrical issue, like a solenoid isn't firing or something, whatever it's supposed to do to bring the red part of the ribbon up towards the print head. I don't know. That's something I'm going to have to investigate. But otherwise, we can turn it on here. Got a nice vacuum fluorescent display. It doesn't look like this thing had a terrible amount of hours on it, because the display is still fairly bright and there's no uneven brightness within the digits. Well, just very slightly. This thing's biggest problem is just being super duper grimy. The printer does work aside from never printing red, it just prints black all the time. But super dirty, grimy, dirty electrical contact on the switches. Those things I think we can definitely clean up today in this video. So let me start by getting this thing apart. I've got to unplug it first. But what's it look like here? We got two screws here and here, and two more here and here, and one right there. So I'll try those 5 screws and see if we get in here. We are in, and there's our date of manufacture. 22 January 1994. So my guess was exactly right as to when this thing was made. I guessed around, I think I said mid-1990s is what my guess was. All the date codes on the components that I can see are late 1993. So that matches up. So we can get a deeper look at the printer mechanism. So I may play around with this thing with the cover off, just so I can take a look and observe how the printer mechanism moves. See if there's anything obviously wrong that's making it not able to print red. Other than that, there's a ton of screws on here that I can remove to get this button board off it, and then I can take all the buttons out and give them a much needed bath. And I could give this whole plastic panel a bath, and if I really wanted to, I could take all the stuff out of here and give this plastic panel a bath, but I think we'll just give that a sponge bath with it fully assembled. But the buttons I will give a full bath. Not as dirty in here as I feared it would be. Just some loose dirt and metal shards and stuff lying around. So I'll give that a vacuum out. And other than that, we'll get the buttons out of here and get them washed up. Ew! God almighty! Holy moly, was this thing used in like a cattle barn or something? My God, that's ugh, that is disgusting. I wonder how it looks underneath. Ugh. Where the holes have been, the dirt on the circuitry too, but the contact pads actually look alright. On the button side, once again a lot of gross dirt. Probably stuff has been alive in this thing. Gross! Well, it's cleanup time. Aha! I found the issue why the printer won't print red. That solenoid is supposed to fire when it prints red. When the solenoid fires, it pushes this little thing backwards, which gives the ribbon mechanism here more leverage to pivot upwards than it normally would. So if I do this, see right now it's doing the equivalent of printing black. And it's only raising a little bit. Now watch what happens. Gotta hold the camera between my legs here. Watch what happens when I force this little lever backwards and then activate the printer. Oh. See, that pivots up way more. That solenoid should be firing to electromagnetically force this lever backwards, but it's not, so it must not be getting power for some reason. Now I've got to figure out why. But at least now I know what's up. Alright, it's the next day. I took a look at this solenoid, and unfortunately, it's bad. It's either partially shorted, or it's just gone really weak for some reason. But I did some testing. The solenoid is getting voltage when it's supposed to, but the electromagnetic pull on this lever that it's supposed to do, it's supposed to magnetically attract this part of the lever to it. That electromagnetic force is just so weak for some reason that it can't do its job. If I hold the lever and energize it, you can just barely feel a pull, but nothing more than that. And I even tried externally powering the solenoid with a 9-volt battery, which was way more voltage than it was getting from the circuit board itself. And still the magnetic pull was just so weak. So I think that solenoid's either partially shorted or it's just bad. But it's not doing its thing anymore. So that put me in a position of wondering, do I keep going with restoring the rest of this thing or not? And I've decided sure. I'm already waist deep into this. I might as well finish the job. And then I'll see what I want to do after that. So this thing will never print red again. But the rest of the printer does still work just fine. It'll just print black for everything. But that's not a huge issue. So, moving on, I cleaned up all of these contact pads. I also cleaned up this switch bank. I cleaned up the rollers on that. And I got all the keys out. So now I'm going to give them and the rubber mat a bath. Getting out the keys is easy. Each key just has some clips that you've got to squeeze with a pair of pliers or whatever, and then you can pull the key off from underneath. So, gonna do that, and then start putting this back together and see how it works. Well, there she be. It's all finished, and it's certainly a ton better than it was before. You can see the keys there, got all the dirt off them. They press really nice now. And take a look at this. I fabricated a paper roll holder for the printer. I sacrificed a wire coat hanger and bent it up and just hot glued it in place. But it holds pretty well. And it does the job. It's a little off center, but it works perfectly fine. So yeah, a little proud of that bit of handiwork. It didn't all go as planned. First of all, this was the first time I used a Scotch-Brite pad for something, and I knew Scotch-Brite pads were abrasive, but I didn't know how abrasive. I used a Scotch-Brite pad and soapy water to get the dirt off the keys, and as you can probably see, I marred the finish on all the keys because of the abrasiveness of the Scotch-Brite pad. That's the one key I didn't do with the Scotch-Brite pad, and it's still nice and shiny. And then these ones are all matte and there's little fine scratches in them, so oops, I learned my lesson there. Well, I'm glad it wasn't on something precious, but yeah, Scotch-Brite pad, not the best thing to use for something like this. Another issue is the three big keys, the 0, add, and multiply. They have, just like a computer keyboard for the spacebar, they have a metal rod that goes from one side of the key to the other, so that you can press one side of the key and it doesn't jam, the whole key still goes down, like that. And I accidentally broke the one for the add key. I was putting it back in after cleaning and drying the keys, and the end of it just snapped right off. Like, I don't know if the metal was already weakened or not. So the add key still works, but it's just a little bit more awkward. I did my best to salvage the rest of the metal rod and sort of bent it all up to make it reach to the other side with the end of it missing. So it's still working, but not as perfect as it was. And then there's the whole dead solenoid. So the printer, although it works, it's never going to be able to print red, just black. But the thing works. I'll do a bit of a demonstration here. I put the ribbon that this came with back in the printer, which is pretty much at the end of its life, but it still prints a little bit. But I'll turn it on here, and we'll add some numbers. Oops, that was a multiply. And yeah, it works. Take a look at the printout here. It works. It's got a markup key, it's got grand total, 4 key memory, percentage, it's got a 00. It's a pretty standard adding machine. There's your switches, it's got item count. You've got a range of decimal modes or floating point. You've got your round up or down, or base it by the 4-5 split. You could do constant or accumulation mode. I think that's what the A stands for, I don't remember. There's your grand total on and off, and you can turn the printer off if you want. And yeah, that's about it. It's working well now, as well as one could have hoped. You got your backspace key, which is nice. So, I don't want to keep this. It was a fun restoration project, but I don't want to keep this. It's in with the problem with the printer, and now I messed up the keys accidentally. I'm not interested enough to keep this thing. It's endearing in its mid-90s-ness, but I've really got no use for it or attachment to it. So what to do? I can't sell it on eBay because it's not fully working and it's got this redneck thing on here, but it's not bad enough to throw away, so I think I'll actually donate this. I'll donate this to the thrift store when they reopen. And maybe it'll give someone else a little bit of joy. So I'll eat the $8 that I paid for this, and I'll donate it to the thrift store. I'll keep my paper roll though, that's the only one I have. But there you go anyhow. There is the cleanup partial restoration and a look inside the Sharp EL-2656G adding machine from 1994. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.